What if the very people who claim to be hunting the monsters were actually the ones feeding them? For over 50 years, the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, marketed itself as America's ultimate moral shield, standing guard against the shadows of extremism. Operating from a lavish Montgomery headquarters, often called the Poverty Palace, they acted as a self-appointed national police force for political correctness. Their primary weapon was a hate map, a digital ledger used to decide who was allowed to participate in society and who was to be cast out as evil. Their word was law, and a single mention could ruin a reputation overnight. They were the good guys, trusted by the FBI and the New York Times, while guiding the big names like Google and Facebook on who to censor and who to show. But behind this facade of justice, a massive federal investigation has revealed a darker reality. The SPLC was allegedly caught funneling millions to the very KKK and neo-Nazi groups they claimed to fight. In April 2026, their mask came off, and what was revealed ended up being far more ugly than anyone could have expected. Turns out the SPLC wasn't just watching the bad guys, they were reportedly paying them. In a move that has shocked the country, a federal grand jury has charged the SPLC with 11 serious crimes. The mainstream media is doing everything it can to avoid talking about it, but you're at the right place if you want to find out about the reality of the Southern Poverty Law Center and the hateful groups being fed by it. Let's take a look. The business of hate. Creating the problem. We have always been told that there is a rising tide of hate in America, but according to the Department of Justice, the SPLC decided to help create that tide themselves. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche spoke at a major press conference in April 2026. He revealed that the SPLC wasn't just tracking extremist groups, they were manufacturing them. The government indictment alleges that under the guise of an investigative research program, the SPLC used a secret informant system to pump over $3 million directly into the pockets of white supremacist leaders. Think about how deep this betrayal goes. Imagine you are a kind-hearted person who wants to help end racism. You donate $50 to the SPLC because you believe their commercials. But instead of fighting racism, the DOJ says your money was funneled through secret accounts to pay for the recruitment posters of a neo-Nazi cell or the activities of a KKK Klansman. The DOJ's message is simple. The SPLC didn't want to stop these groups. They wanted to keep them on life support to ensure that the donation checks from scared Americans kept rolling in. As Blanche told the gathered reporters,
as the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
this isn't just a lapse in judgment, it is a business model. For the SPLC, a world with no hate is a world where they don't get a paycheck. If the Ku Klux Klan actually disappeared, the SPLC's massive war chest would have no reason to exist. By allegedly funding these groups, they weren't just infiltrating them. They were providing the venture capital for racial division. The Charlottesville shock. Who really paid for the riot? If you think it couldn't get any darker, look at the Charlottesville connection. The criminal charges include a claim so explosive it should be the only thing on the news. The SPLC allegedly paid the leader of the group that organized the 2017 Unite the Right rally. We all remember that day. It was violent, scary, and a young woman named Heather Heyer lost her life. For years, the SPLC used the horror of Charlottesville to raise tens of millions of dollars. They showed pictures of people with torches to scare donors into opening their wallets. If these federal charges are true, it means the SPLC helped pay for the very fire they claimed to be putting out. The DOJ alleges that these payments were hidden from banks and donors, violating federal law and basic ethics.
Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred.
How can a group claim to be the vanguard of civil rights while they are secretly giving money to the people who organized one of the most violent racist rallies in modern times? The big media blackout. But if it's such important news, then why haven't you seen this on the front page of every newspaper? Why isn't CNN running a 24-hour countdown to the trial? Why is the coverage tucked away in late-night news cycles? The answer is simple. The SPLC is the media's primary source. For decades, whenever a news outlet wanted to smear a conservative group, a church, or a group of parents, they called the SPLC to get a hate group quote. The media relied on the SPLC to provide the moral authority needed to cancel their political enemies. To admit the SPLC is a fraud is to admit that the media's entire narrative of the last 20 years was built on a foundation of paid-for extremism. Critics have long warned that the SPLC was a hate-mongering machine, but now the government has the receipts. The media isn't reporting this because they are complicit. They use the SPLC's hate map to destroy reputations, while the SPLC was allegedly using donor money to keep real hate groups in business. This is total hypocrisy. These are the same news stations that lecture us on fake news and disinformation. Yet, they have spent decades promoting an organization that was reportedly laundering money to the Aryan Nations. The cover-up. Who was protecting the SPLC? One of the most chilling parts of this story is how long it was hidden. The DOJ revealed that this investigation actually started years ago. However, it was allegedly shuttered during the Biden administration. Think about that. People in the federal government saw evidence that a major charity was giving money to neo-Nazis and the KKK, and they closed the file. It took a change in leadership and a revived DOJ under the Trump administration to finally bring these charges to a grand jury. This suggests that some groups have a protected status. As long as you are attacking the right people, like conservatives or religious groups, the government might ignore your financial crimes. This wasn't just a failure of one nonprofit. It was a systemic protection racket designed to keep a powerful political ally in power. The indictment says the SPLC's secret payments went on until at least 2023. This means that while they were publicly yelling about threats to democracy, they were privately writing checks to the very groups they told us to fear, from their not-so-humble multi-million-dollar palace, the Poverty Palace, and the Cayman Connection. For years, the SPLC sat on a pile of money worth nearly $500 million. They weren't spending that money on the poor people of the South. Instead, they stashed much of it in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, a move that is almost unheard of for a charity that only works on American domestic issues. The SPLC used its millions to build a giant, expensive office in Montgomery that stands as a monument to its own ego. They used their legal muscle to bully anyone who disagreed with them. They once labeled the Family Research Council, a normal Christian group, a hate group, an act that many believe inspired a 2012 shooting at that group's headquarters. They also labeled Moms for Liberty, a group of parents who care about their children's education, as extremists. They targeted anyone who questioned the radical agenda. But while they were pointing the finger at suburban moms and religious charities, they were reportedly laundering money to the Aryan Nations. This isn't social justice. It is a high-level financial scam designed to weaponize the legal system against political rivals while keeping a core group of villains on the payroll to keep the donor base terrified. But the big question is, what do they say about it now that they've been exposed? Infiltration or incitement? The SPLC's defense is what you would expect. They claim that these payments were part of an informant program aimed at spying on these groups. But there is a very big difference between spying and helping. If a rich NGO pays the leader of a hate group, provides the funding for their rallies, and helps them get new members, they are no longer monitoring the group. They are running the group. The DOJ indictment suggests that the SPLC went far beyond mere observation. By providing millions of dollars to these organizations, they ensured that these groups had the resources to spread their message. This created a perfect evil feedback loop. The SPLC funds a hate group. The hate group performs a scary act of extremism. The SPLC goes on TV to talk about how scary the group is and asks for donations. The cycle repeats, and the SPLC gets richer. This is a parasitic relationship. The SPLC needs the KKK just as much as the KKK reportedly needed the SPLC's secret funding. Without each other, both would be out of business. I thought they were the good guys? The SPLC's interim president, Brian Fair, put out a video statement saying the organization is outraged and will vigorously defend itself. They are already playing the victim, claiming this is a politically motivated attack. But the American people are tired of that excuse. Sending $3 million to hate groups isn't fighting racism. Lying to banks and donors is a crime, not a political opinion. Fraud is fraud, no matter which side of the political aisle you are on. The indictment of the SPLC marks the end of an era where progressive NGOs could act without being questioned. It reminds us that sometimes the people who say they are fighting monsters are actually the ones feeding them. As this case moves through the courts, we must ask, how many other watchdog groups are actually attack dogs for a political agenda? How much of the extremism we see on the news is organic? And how much is paid for by groups who profit from the chaos? Why did the media and the previous DOJ administration look the other way for so long? What happens to the thousands of people who were canceled based on the lies of an organization that was reportedly bankrolling neo-Nazis? The mask is off. The good guys were reportedly the bankers for the bad guys, and the mainstream media is hoping you never find out. Share this before the fact-checkers try to tell you that $3 million for the KKK is just investigative research. The era of the SPLC's moral monopoly is over. It's time for the truth.